Welcome to Dead Man's Island. No joke. The top national news investigation, which I'm the unheard eyewitness in, takes place on Dead Man's Island. This is a documentary on the most important issue in the United States when it was playing out on Dead Man's Island in 2013 and 2014, all the way up to today, April of 2026. This is the grand conspiracy that's all over the news. I am the unheard eyewitness that caught the U.S. attorney that signed the FISA warrant against Trump. This is how the FBI, NSA, and DOJ are still using FISA, the FISA spy program, to pillage the taxpayers. This is the epic fraud, waste, and abuse that you want prosecuted. Welcome to episode 2 of my story, Skin Diving with the Sharks. Hello everyone, I'm Ferris Broxton. This is my story of how the FBI, CIA, and DOJ criminals that used the FISA program to overthrow your government kept me silent, using your money for the last 17 years. Episode 2 starts in 2013 on Dead Man's Island. The spy agencies are constantly spending your money to try to force me into a fraudulent settlement so they can keep me quiet and control me. They won't let me have an honest settlement and expose Sally Yates, the biggest criminal in U.S. history, before she commits the notorious crime of classifying Donald Trump as a Russian agent. While they're carrying out this operation, surrounding me and silencing me, Sally Yates is the top U.S. attorney and acting attorney general of the United States, who is conspiring with Jim Comey and John Brennan to control Trump and America. Yes, Sally Yates named James Comey and John Brennan as co-conspirators when I stung her. While James Comey and John Brennan's names are a target in the grand conspiracy investigation, it was Sally Yates that signed the FISA warrant against Trump in 2016. At the same time, I made the recording that you heard on the introduction to this video when spies are following me and threatening me. That CB recording that you heard on the introduction to this podcast has a U.S. spy saying, "These people are robbing the Citizens Bank like no one's business." This government agent is trying to convince me to cooperate with stealing millions of dollars of your money. If you don't think these people I caught are still in control of our government today, then why haven't any of them been arrested and prosecuted? Why haven't you seen me on top national news? Much of the evidence you find on my website has been online for years. Clearly, the deep state is still very much in control of our investigations and our government. The U.S. attorney in North Dakota is caught abusing FISA, controlling social media because they're caught stealing your money through the FISA fraud, and they have to silence the witness, me. Now, follow me to Dead Man's Island, where I begin my journey unraveling how the people that overthrew our country did it. Dead Man's Island is a barrier island off of Gulf Breeze, which is an island off of Pensacola, Florida. It's about a mile long. Graphic 1, please. Ever heard of Pensacola Beach? Real popular vacation spot. The lazy and corrupt NSA and FBI agents that get involved in this corruption prefer assignments in paradise. Years before, my ex and her mom, who worked for Sally Yates, were operating in the Caribbean. No doubt with Jeffrey Epstein. She planned a vacation for us, very close to Epstein's Island, and talked about her mom's activities nearby. That's another story for another day. The point being that these people gaining control over your government, and this is how they're doing it. Now, someone manipulated the situation around Dead Man's Island and caused a group of large companies to put up a multi-million-dollar reef that created an incredible fishing habitat right in my backyard. Looking back, I have no doubt that Sally Yates orchestrated this, not only to keep me distracted, but as motivation to the spies that were following me. That's right. You're paying spies to go fishing as part of an operation that's set up to steal your money. It has no other purpose. It's a real inefficient way to run a government, but they do whatever they want when nobody's held accountable. And this is all black ops. It's all secret. Secret money in a covert operation that they never have to explain. Graphics 2, please. Dead Man's Island is an island off of Gulf Breeze, right along the Barrier Island route to Pensacola Beach. Dead Man's Island has been in my family since my grandparents' youth. Grandpa bought the property, the only property that has foot access to Dead Man's Island, some 70 or 80 years ago. My grandparents split up and Grandma got the big house at 86 High Point Drive. The house with the only foot access to Dead Man's Island. The house itself sits high on a bluff. You can walk down a long flight of stairs in the backyard to the lower section of the property, the wooded backyard, which edges the beach of Pensacola Bay. Graphic 3, please. If you look closely, you can see there is a man-made oyster reef that goes around Dead Man's Island. This is a protected area. No power boats allowed around the reef, and no power boats allowed between the island and the reef, all the way out to a boathouse that's visible on the right of that photo. This is going to be relevant later when poachers, spies, protected by the police, attack me in a boat. Since I was a young boy, Grandma's house was just like the wardrobe in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This old house where my family would meet was just the entrance to Paradise Island. Step through the glass doors This old house where my family would meet, my grandma's house, was just the entrance to Paradise Island, or Dead Man's Island. Sliding glass doors lined the back of the house so that the view was spectacular even from inside. Step through the glass door and you're on a large porch, 50 feet over the water. You're overlooking a pristine, private, and dreamy paradise. Grandma's old house was high on a bluff. Walk down the long flight of stairs on the heavily wooded cliff, and the backyard introduces you to Dead Man's Island, from the shade of live oaks and magnolias. My grandparents scored big when they purchased this access decades before I was born. The island was used to quarantine sick sea travelers during the establishment of our country, hence the name. Growing up, this was my secret fort. Out of sight from the houses that appear close, there are trees and dunes and plenty of privacy. No one can get onto Dead Man's Island unless they come by boat or walk out on the private access by Grandma's backyard. To make it even more private, it's a park. Daylight hours only, at least if you come by boat. There is no public boat ramp. So I can pretty much do whatever I want on Grandma's property, on our beach, essentially. The entire island was at my disposal. Throughout my youth, I made excellent use of this special place, even when Grandma had no idea I was around. I could park in the large driveway, put a note on my windshield in the event Grandma found my car, and walk around the house, down the stairs, and onto Paradise Island. I've done that 100 times. So back to my garage in Winder, Georgia. Graphics 4, please. This is the engine room. The engines were all off, but the game was on. I was doing something that I never did before, never dreamed of doing, something I could never prepare myself to do. I was stinging the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the Southeast. This is the agreement when I stung Sally Yates, using FISA to run a multi-million-dollar white-collar heist in March of 2010. What you see there in this entrance is the entrance to a 6-car garage. The two hot rod trucks in the picture are Bertha, a custom-built classic V20 Suburban with all the goodies, and Goldilocks, a 1972 gold and black C20 big block Chevy. This is where it all goes down. We have a long conversation where Sally Yates is ironing out all the details of a massive conspiracy. I have no intentions of cooperating, but I have to pretend to go along in order to catch her. I'm being attacked in my own house by the same U.S. attorney that attacked Trump 6 years later. I'm not a cop. I don't have a team close by to rescue me. I'm just a man who is horribly wronged, determined to catch the people who kidnapped my son. At this point, I have no idea that I'm caught up in this mess because Sally Yates was trying to get a massive, fraudulent payoff to compensate my mother-in-law for fixing transcripts for previous Black Ops heist and other government crime. Massive governmental corruption. Again, this is where I stung the person who conspired with Jim Comey and John Brennan to classify Trump as a Russian agent. I had no idea how big this was. The names James and Brennan were brought up repeatedly, but I had no idea who Jim Comey and John Brennan were. I was saying Brandon instead of Brennan. She knew who was on the short list to fill these top government positions. I had no idea that I was stinging the criminal that was plotting the overthrow of our country, planning to keep puppets that they controlled through blackmail in top positions of our government. This is when Sally Yates revealed her true intentions and tells me that Trump is the biggest obstacle they face, the biggest obstacle we face in this heist. This is when Sally Yates identifies herself as the Eastern Star, the female branch of the Freemasons, and says, we're taking over by whatever means necessary, and that they will do whatever they have to do in order to make sure Trump does not become the president of the United States. Sally asked me some real tough questions, and I didn't have the answers. If you lost everything you had and had no one to help you, where would you go? Sally asked. My response? Dead Man's Island. It's just the first place I could think that I would go if I lost everything. I didn't know that David Lord had slipped Rohypnol into my beer at this point. I didn't have any recollection of any of this conversation until they reminded me, piece by piece, little by little, over a period of years. Very cleverly, these criminals sent cutouts to me to recite portions of the conversation they wanted me to remember at that point. Sally continued to ask tough questions that I wasn't ready for. Who's going to be your FBI agent, and where are you going to go when you leave the country? Somehow I recalled the names Chris Bish and Sarah Thomas, or I recall those names coming up. Sally was naming many of the close connections that she thought would help in this racket. I don't know. I made it clear I didn't have any FBI, GBI, or NSA friends, but that they would have to come up with the one that was mighty fine if I was going to be traveling overseas with her. Then I had to have someone else also, a trusted friend who I could rely on. Did I want my big burly best friend to go with me? They knew who that was. No. They made it clear that they could make anyone cooperate. I just had to pick which friend I wanted. It was evident to me that they wanted to involve someone they could use to make it look like I cooperated with this. They needed my commitment tied in. I didn't realize they had already started working on that angle. They were already trying to get some of my friends to help their way. I had no intentions of going along with these people, but I was stuck. I couldn't get through the sting without naming a co-conspirator. Then it hit me. Robbie. I'll go with Robbie. Robert Moreland was the last person I would go anywhere with. I was furious with Robert Moreland, and I knew I could prove that I had no intentions of going anywhere with him. I've stated many times that God put this challenge squarely in front of me, where I couldn't get around it. He guided me, protected me, and defended me in this entire saga. At that time, Robert Moreland was accusing me of taking advantage of my mother, while Sally Yates' legal family was systematically attacking me, trying to financially break me. My uncle Robert Moreland took the opportunity to blame me. He was accusing me because I was being attacked. I don't like Robert Moreland at all, but he's innocent. He's not culpable in this case. Sally Yates and her criminal team of spies spied on Robert Moreland, gained control over him, and forced him to cooperate with their plan. This is what our spy agencies have been up to in the United States of America with your money. They can set a trap that will ensnare anyone. I've learned how they do this. When we get back to the island, you're going to see that Sally Yates and her government agents are forcing Robert Moreland to help me go through with a racket that I refuse to cooperate with. They had years to gain control over this man. They spied on him and did so, instead of going after the real criminals. The man who falsely accused me of exploiting my mother has gotten a taste of FISA abuse, like few people you will ever hear from. The puppet that they would use to testify against me if I rolled over on them can only effectively testify against them. He can tell you what our US DOJ in an essay did to him to gain control over him. I'm sure it's very shameful, but that needs to be seen by the citizens so we can see how the spies gain control over our government officials. So as Robbie comes up in this story, you'll be able to see that this man is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, as you watch how the U.S. Attorney manipulates a smart scientist named Robert Moreland, consider how easy it is for a U.S. Attorney to manipulate an illegal immigrant. I made a supplemental video, a document, a little more on this rift between Robert and myself. I had zero trust for this man. I would have never gone anywhere with him. He betrayed me instead of coming to my defense when I was attacked. He was the nearby relative who should have listened to me and rallied my family around me. But instead, he took the opportunity to smear his father's favorite. That video is on Rumble. Ferris Broxton on Rumble, video number 58. Now, Robert Moreland. So as I sting Sally Yates in my garage, and she gets a video of this agreement, graphic 5, please. There are many details she has to cover. So we get to part 2 of the contract. I had no idea what I was getting into. So here we are. If I want to catch her, the person that's telling me they're going to overthrow our government and can't stop now, we extend the contract. Graphic 6, please. She just keeps going on about all the things that have to be covered. I have no idea that this video will be passed to U.S. attorneys who will abuse their position and use the Black Ops FISA program to advance the racket that I'm stinging. They will fall for the sting, convinced by my performance, and get involved stealing Black Ops money through FISA, thinking they'll get part of the settlement. I have no idea that this video will ultimately ensnare attorneys in Florida, Utah, and North Dakota. I have no idea that the video and the sting I conducted on that video will be the motivation for U.S. attorneys to conspire to silence me in multiple investigations to this day. Silencing America's most important unheard eyewitness. The U.S. Attorney Drew Wrigley and Nick Chase are still silencing me to this day and obstructing the grand conspiracy investigation because the best witness will expose them for fraud, racketeering, and now treason. Do you think these caught criminals would hesitate to use FISA to intercept my calls and reports to all proper authorities? I'm running for U.S. House Rep for North Dakota. Do you think that these caught criminals would hesitate to interfere with an election? That's what this investigation's about in the first place. To shadow ban me or even frame me? They've threatened to do this many times already and set many traps that I've caught. I'm only here because of the grace of God. Now back to Dead Man's Island. In November 2013, I'm released from Jackson County Jail with nothing. They've held me without bond or trial for almost 4 years on completely bogus charges. One of the other inmates put enough money on my books for me to catch a bus from Jackson County, Georgia to Pensacola, Florida. Think about that. I couldn't reach a friend or relative or even my neighbors to help me unless they controlled that person. So I'm on a long bus ride with plenty of time to reflect on how I went from being a very successful young man to having nothing at all, not even able to afford bus fare. I have every excuse at this point to cooperate with the criminals and take a multi-million-dollar settlement. This is how they operate. At this point, I still have no recollection of telling Sally Yates I would go to Dead Man's Island. Instead, I'm going to my father's parents in nearby Pensacola. I stay with my paternal grandparents for a short time, thinking I'll be able to find a job quickly. I realize Robert Moreland no longer lives in Georgia. He now lives in Pensacola and has the run of his mother's house in Gulf Breeze. Within weeks, I'm offered a position taking care of my mom's mother at Dead Man's Island and move into her beach house to do just that. Robbie doesn't live there, and I don't have to put up with him much. Another uncle, one of Robbie's brothers, makes most of the decisions regarding Grandma's estate. Grandma's old house is a lot like, have you ever seen the movie Fletch? Grandma liked to keep things in their natural condition. Grandma Pat Moreland, was more, how can I put this? Her kids, my aunts and uncles, said that they didn't want to ruin their relationship by spending too much time with her. Grandma lived alone in that house from the time I was born. She had her own systems, and nobody was going to tell her how to manage her place. Grandma's closest friend was this little pet thing that she called Sushi. I was warned about Sushi. Grandma had a dog named Sushi since I could remember. This was Sushi 5, I think. Sushi was a little dog with long hair and a little ball of fuzz with fangs hanging out, kind of like a miniature Russian boar. I figured out pretty quick why Grandma had become isolated when I tried to hug her. This little creature had staked its claim to my grandmother, and Grandmother was just fine with that arrangement. Nobody could manage Sushi because Grandma wouldn't let him, and nobody could manage Grandma because Sushi wouldn't let him. Now, Sushi wasn't trained to go outside. Sushi would walk outside with Grandma, but Grandma's vision wasn't what it used to be. She'd gone pretty smell deaf, too. Now, it was my job to be the bad man and clean up the house. I wasn't going to let my grandmother live in the filth that had developed. To be fair, Robbie had already made a pretty good attempt to get a handle on the situation. I could tell that he struggled to improve the condition his mother was living in before I got there. So Grandma and Sushi were in the west wing of that house, and I set up in the east wing, which was relatively uncontaminated. I had a couple big rooms and a bathroom. I could shut the doors and keep the temperamental animal out of my stuff. Now, the coons were a different story. They made a good bit of noise in the attic, but they never made it through the sheetrock. Grandma's property was all kinds of overgrown. The wildlife at 86 High Point Drive had been established for generations. I could tell the local critters were unnerved by the new resident. Somehow they knew it was going to be an issue. So this is where I start over. I had to take care of Grandma to pay my room and board. If I clean and cook for her, then I get to eat too. I had nothing. Not even a bicycle. No phone, no car, nothing. It was November in Florida. A little beach town in Florida. Jobs were as scarce as bikinis. I had no idea what FISA abuse was. I had no idea that someone could intercept any call I made. I didn't even have my own phone. No computer, no phone, no friend. Starting over from scratch. I may as well have been 100 miles out at sea, living on an island in the middle of the ocean. Now, somebody had convinced some big companies to put up a multi-million-dollar reef around the island. The fishing habitat on my private island was off the chain. Graphics 3, please. I could go out there and catch sea trout, redfish, snapper, sharks, stingrays, you name it. I could net blue crabs and stone crabs or set crab traps and fish traps and have the time of my life in the backyard on Fantasy Island. I could dive and spearfish as much as I wanted. In a short time, I got a job with a local landscaper and I started climbing back up the ladder from the bottom rung. I didn't realize that the spies were keeping me from getting a real job. It wasn't that I wouldn't have been able to get a good job. It was FISA abuse. The more I strove to be independent, the more I began to realize that I was being hobbled. I wasn't getting the proper response from job applications I submitted. Because of my background in landscaping and chemical management, I was quickly put in charge of the estates at my landscaping job. I handled the big money properties. My clients drove Lamborghinis, Porsches, Ferraris, and Bentleys. I had the skill and know-how to please the most distinguished clients. They loved having a skilled landscape artist on their estate. I'd go the extra mile to put the finishing touches on their property. I was a skilled artist in the landscape business. But palm trees were something that was completely new to me. We didn't have palm trees in Atlanta. I quickly learned. I learned how to climb the palms and trim them up like a picture from a postcard. I don't mind getting dirty, and I like to climb as much as any squirrel. Always have. There was no shortage of tall palm trees on the estate I managed, and I would do whatever needed to be done to make my customers happy. But sometimes I'd climb way up to the top of that ladder and fire up that chainsaw just to find out there were bees way up in that thing. Well, after work, I'd float my icebox out to the reef. Let's back up a little bit. After work, I'd stock up on supplies. And then I'd float my icebox out to the reef. I had fish traps set out under my neighbor's docks, along with crab traps. The live bait I was using was big enough to eat for dinner. The fish I was catching were straight out of the bonus round. As I improved my setup, the game fish kept getting bigger. Now, I'd float a large ice chest out with me and tie it to my waist with a cord about 10 feet long or so. I kept catching big sea trout and redfish. I keep them on a stringer tied next to me. I keep my live bait fish in a bait bucket tied to the other side of the ice chest. I should have changed my name to Chum. I would frequently find large fish, dolphins, and sharks swimming around me, trying to get the bait or the fish I already caught. Now, the bigger fish you have on the line, the more likely, a lot of times, the fish were so big that they just pull you out into the deep water. And the deeper it gets, the harder it is to hold on to that reel. And well, it can get pretty interesting. Holding the reel up over your head while being dragged out into the deep water, treading water with an ice box and all these fish tied to me, and all the friends that they invited over. Sometimes I'd spend an hour or more fighting a fish and find some other sea creature. Something that I didn't even know what was on the line, just right up on me. And then, at the last minute, you never knew when Mother Nature was going to sneak up on you. Sometimes I'd find myself in over my head. When you're neck deep with the waves splashing over your face and you realize you got a shark on the line, well, you got to do something. The closest refuge I could find was the reef. I'd make my way over to the reef and climb up on it to get away from the sharks. Problem was, the reef was covered in oyster shells, so I'd get cut to pieces to get away from the sharks. This created another problem, a real serious problem, getting back to the shore from the reef. Sometimes, as I stood on the reef watching shark fins circling the bloody water, Dead Man's Island and quarantine would take on a whole new meaning. There were times when I felt lucky to make it back home. I didn't have anyone to share my experience with, nobody that would understand. Grandma was more interested in Lawrence Welk and eating what I brought home. The dog wasn't any help either. I endured and brought the fare to Grandma. Still, the lure of the reef was a powerful draw. I bought diving suits to fish and spearfish with in the water, and I had a kayak. I had enough close calls with the sharks and stingrays in the daylight, but things could get pretty treacherous after the sun went down. Now, I could tell Grandma was starting to go around the bend. She didn't have any concern about me coming in late, all cut up, or leaving late to catch the poachers in the backyard that were raising Cain. Grandma wasn't much for talking about fishing, or really very aware of what was going on around her, but she still loved the seafood. She was fine with me cleaning up the house. That's how I knew things had changed. I could do whatever I wanted in the kitchen, as long as I sat with her and watched Lawrence Welk. But Grandma wasn't getting any better. She was getting harder and harder to manage. One day I asked her what she would like for dinner. I came in. I've got some nice sea trout, a redfish, and this beautiful sheep's head, the absolute best. I showed her my catch. Grandma wanted the sheep's head. I fixed it right up with the herbs and the potatoes and the broiler. I presented it to her on a tray with Lawrence Welk tap dancing on the TV. She was impressed. Just as I tried to sit down and enjoy mine, I watched her set her tray on the floor for sushi. She looked over and informed me that she decided what she wanted for dinner. I want beef Wellington with stone crab salad, Grandma ordered. That's when I knew. It was time to buy a big long pair of welding gloves and shave every flea off of that stupid little animal. That's when I knew it wouldn't be long until Grandma would be going on a permanent vacation without her sushi. It wouldn't be long until I'd have to take care of 86 High Point Drive all by myself. Now, one of the strange projects I got into on Dead Man's Island was developing an archery device. I invented an archery device. This was pretty cool. I knew I could make $1 million on my invention. I started designing this thing. What it was a cast that you could put your hand into. A person could put it on their arm, but it moved the release for an archer from his fingertips closer to his elbow. So this increased the draw length and the kinetic energy of an archer's arrow radically. This device would revolutionize the archery industry and open up the sport to many smaller people, women, and children who struggle due to their size and strength. I got a provisional patent and solved many design problems and production challenges that Robbie said were impossible. I spoke with the industry leaders that were convinced my device was worth $1 million if I could do it. I already had it. I just had it in the car. I wasn't showing them. All I had to do was get a permanent patent, a utility patent. I had saved up the money for the utility patent before my provisional patent expired. I was working on the prototype and practicing with it on a regular basis. I would shoot from the back porch down to the lower backyard or take it out on the island. I continued to work and fish, but now it was a little easier. I didn't have to watch Grandma or Lawrence Welk every day, and I didn't have to cook for sushi anymore. Life will be better, I thought. I focused on enjoying my situation as much as possible and on figuring out how to mass produce and market my archery invention. All I had to do was make $1 million, the honest way. Then I'd be able to break through the invisible bubble the spy agencies had around me. That was my plan. I'd work full-time and finance my project until I could use it to make real money. I didn't spend much time laying around back on the beach and watching the Blue Angels scratch holes in the sky. The Navy fighter jet team practiced in the backyard. So I could wade out and catch big fish, gorge myself on fresh seafood, and try to figure out how I was going to put all the pieces together to prove my story. I watched the raptors diving on the reef and struggle back into the air with big fish hung up in their landing gear. My life was on the rocks, marooned by governmental corruption, but I was trying to make the best of it. I decked out my kayak and filled the freezer with prime fare. But I didn't spend all my time fishing. Even when I was fishing, I was trying to figure out how to get out of the trap, out of the life trap that Sally Yates had me in. Now that Grandma was gone, Robbie started to take a new interest in the house. He started inviting friends over and even planned a party. I didn't like it, but I really didn't have any choice. It wasn't my house. I was looking for a way out, a way to support myself and be independent of this trap that I was in. The friends that Robbie tried to make for me got on my nerves horribly. The people that Robbie invited over and tried to get me involved with, I avoided them like the plague. The party he planned wasn't the only party someone planned for me. At one point, about 20 young ladies showed up at the house. This is how the spy agency operates. 20 young ladies and one guy. They wanted to spend the night on my island on some Friday or Saturday night. They wanted to make plans to have a party, as they put it, a party on my island. Their words. They claimed to be from the graduating class of the high school. I still claim to be not quite as stupid as I look. I pointed out that the island beyond our family property was a park and that it closed at dark. When Dad got done letting them know that he didn't have any control over the park, but that the property he managed had rules, they didn't want to play anymore. Now we're going to see this trap over and over again. Kind of sounds familiar with what's going on in national politics, don't it? Jeffrey Epstein. Now, as far as the party that Robbie planned, that was a bunch of spies. NSA agents, no doubt. NSA, spies, people that you pay to do whatever they want. It's funny how they were able to remind me of all these commitments that I made many years before when I stung Sally Yates in Winder, Georgia. At one point, we're all down on the beach telling stories. I had pretty much figured out what was going on. They were trying to get the party moved to a restaurant on Pensacola Beach. It was a really nice place. They wanted me to go. That had been a special spot for me and my ex, the one that tried to force me into this racket. So once again, here I am recalling that as they tell me this story, what they're doing, I'm recalling the sting. I'm reliving the plans that I agreed to, that I wasn't going to go along with. Now, the last story I told these people was about how I have an addictive personality. When asked what I was addicted to, I clarified. No, it's not like that. I'm not addicted to anything. It's the other people. People get addicted to me and can't leave me alone. They thought that was just hilarious. I was recalling how I told Sally Yates that they would have to kidnap me if they wanted me to cooperate, that I would fight with everything in me. While they were trying to get me onto a different beach where they could get a big boat, I quietly disappeared into the dunes on Dead Man's Island. As I lie hiding in fear of my life, afraid that I would be kidnapped and killed to get the money the government owed me, I reflected on how hard I worked to earn the American dream. These people stole everything from me. I ran a company with hot rods. The company I built, I ran with hot rod trucks. I had a large workshop at my house where I could take care of everything at home in Winder, Georgia. I had land in Florida, nearby where this all takes place. I had an antitrust lawsuit against an insurance company in Atlanta. I had an invention from an engine that is still superior to anything on the market today. And I had an attorney representing me before the University of Georgia and other potential developers on that invention. I was set for life. My finances didn't represent the typical American lifestyle. Most Americans' finances are more like a small boat with a big sail in a bad storm, with a small girl hiding under the bed and crying off the coast of Somalia. Now, poor Robbie just went the wrong way in life. I have no doubt that the criminals in the spy agency got control of him, the same way they get control of so many of our politicians. This man who tried to get me into business with him many times would not, could not make the right decision. While he had tried to get me to go into business with him growing up many, many different times, here he was with me telling him, "You got caught in a trap." Somehow our spy agencies were making his decisions for him. He couldn't make the right decision. I told him many times how I stung Sally Yates, but he would just get frustrated and walk off. I'd be happy to testify in his defense if he wanted to come clean. Some of the things he said were straight out of the mouth of Sally Yates from when I stung her. Excuse me. One day, as I was pleading with Robbie to help me expose them, he responded with one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. A clear and disturbing statement from Sally Yates. "I don't care about anyone but me and mine." How do these people get to this point? How do secret government agents and federal prosecutors get to the point when we let them, we don't hold them accountable. We don't defend the whistleblowers. Americans don't help the victims of government corruption because the FBI and the spy criminals have proven that they can and will destroy anyone who exposes them. So I ponder the massive reef I was enjoying and how all the locals were dumbfounded that some organizations spent millions on it. I began to suspect that the poachers were agents following me. Poachers would come into the reef with big boats under power and run me down while I was waiting. The area was clearly marked as a protected zone. No motors, period. The more I refused to cooperate with their program, the more I got harassed in my backyard. I had poachers come in at night and holler obscenities, intentionally waking me up and provoking me from the waters below my window. They would disappear when I finally went down to get the boat numbers. The police played dumb. Incidentally, the Freemasons were very established in the Gulf Breeze Police Department. The police wouldn't respond, but kept telling me I had to get the numbers off the poachers' boats. That's a hard thing to do at night. Get the ID numbers off a boat that's 50 feet out in the water. Finally, one night I did. It was the same guys that had been poaching night after night after night in the same spot. I ran out in the dark and grabbed the back of the boat, trying to get to the side of it and get the numbers off it. One of the poachers stabbed me in the face with a trident. You can still see the scars today. The coward threatened me and dared me to come to the boat ramp. My next-door neighbor, Bobby, was a witness to the whole thing. I called the police on my way to the boat ramp and told them if they wanted to handle the poachers turned violent, they needed to get down there and do so before I dealt with them. The Gulf Breeze police told me to go home and assured me that they would handle it and follow up with me at my place. There was only one truck with a boat trailer at the boat ramp when I left there. When the police came to my house, saw the stabs in my face, witnessed the stab wounds in my face, and said they weren't going to do anything. They didn't even get the tag number off the truck and had no intentions of following up. I could identify the poachers that stabbed me in the face. They came an inch from putting my eye out. Why were the police protecting them? The next day I went out to fish with a camera. I was fishing on the reef, waiting for the poachers to harass me again. A huge Coast Guard speedboat pulled up at a good distance off and watched me dive for at least a couple hours. This is our military involved with federal racketeering. Of course, they take their instructions from the U.S. Attorney. That would be Sally Yates at that time. As the law enforcement ignored the poachers, one neighbor sold their house, citing the reef as a problem. I couldn't enjoy the island because of poachers running me down in boats while I followed the rules. This reminded me once again of the conversation when I stung Sally Yates. If you can't work because the harassment's too bad, what would you do? I responded, I would go fishing. What would the spies do to harass you while you're fishing? She asked. I was constantly reminded of the contract I made with Sally Yates by Robert Moreland, as well as other skits that people acted out for me. Puppets came acting out skits to remind me of these commitments, while law enforcement ignored the attacks against me. Now that's still going on today in North Dakota, which will be in later episodes. At this point, I had the evidence and proof that I only intended to sting Sally Yates, but my voice was easily silenced. I pled with the FBI to help me, showing that my child was abducted and that I had been wrongfully imprisoned. I still have those reports today. I proved that the FBI in Florida was ignoring a report that my child was kidnapped. This proves that they were behind this, as they ignored the obvious kidnapping. Many of the reports I've filed with the FBI and other authorities are under evidence on my website, ferrisbroxton.com. This is before the world learned that from Kash Patel in 2025, that the FBI hid millions of documents in these investigations. I was desperate to get away from Robbie. 86 High Point Drive, and now even my boss at work was cooperating with the spies. I was trying to get out by the only door I could find. I was trying to get my commercial driver's license. I thought I could live in a truck and work, making enough money to get ahead. I didn't realize how bad they would be able to sabotage me as a truck driver. I didn't realize that I had already talked about driving a truck for a living when I stung Sally Yates. This was just the only door I could find to get out of the trap I was in, hoping to improve my situation. But it just pushed me further into another trap, one that I had agreed to so many years earlier, but not really. Graphic 6, please. When I stung Sally Yates, I made constant references to my trucks because that was the riddle in the sting. Sally Yates was saying that I would be able to drive a semi-truck and pay off the FBI and judges by restoring trucks for the company I worked for. In other words, I have to fix a truck in order to go to work, so they get to exploit me, is exactly the way that she put it. Driving a truck and restoring a truck fit perfectly with the sting. I just never thought it would go this far. I didn't realize that they left this door open because that was the agreement in the sting. The highest paying truck driving jobs in this country are in North Dakota. And I told Sally Yates that if I lost everything, I would go where I could make the most money. She named North Dakota. It's amazing how long it took for me to get here. Her plan was that I could make good money with the company and pay off the authorities. It fit perfectly with the sting because it proved that I wouldn't cooperate, and the only reference to me conspiring was a clear reference to the sting. I had no idea that they would ultimately force me into a situation where I was driving an FBI agent's truck. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm still broke in Florida. I'm winning vacations constantly. I win a vacation to the Caribbean every month, just randomly in the mail, with my name on it. What's up with that? I focused on my new invention. I had enough challenge coming up with the money for the utility patent for my invention before the provisional patent expired. Robbie was insisting that I wouldn't be able to mass produce the device with a mold. I did. I solved the challenge using a different coordinate system. But then I was methodically sabotaged. I'm informed that I've been promoted at work. But then my promotion and my entire paycheck are withheld at a critical point. Right when I managed to get the patent money arranged, my paycheck is withheld without any reason or explanation through the holidays. My patent attorney doesn't get paid, and he doesn't get my patent. The delay was just long enough to cause me to lose the patent. That wasn't an accident. There were a few very loud instances proving that my employer, Ken Griffin, conspired with the spies to sabotage me. He even tried to make a false accusation that I assaulted his daughter when I resigned my position. Now, his daughter was up there. She was a big lady. And her husband, he was up there. He was a huge man. His daughter made it very clear that I never did anything at all to warrant her father's spontaneous outburst that I assaulted his daughter. The owner of the company just randomly started hollering for help, claiming that I assaulted his daughter while I'm trying to work. Who puts these people up to this nonsense? One man who ran to assist looked at the situation and walked away. Plenty of people were close by watching. It's pretty shameful when the owner of a company hollers for help at the office with several employees around and nobody believes him. They all walked away. It's that crazy. I took care of this man's personal estate. He repeatedly pointed out that his estate looked better than ever before because I was servicing it. He publicly admired my artwork, and he owned a large landscape company. I was the property manager for all of Ken Griffin's premium customers. I took care of the beachfront estates, the properties of the most powerful attorneys and entrepreneurs in the area, and nobody ever had any complaints about me. But my time had come. I was trying hard to reach a good civil rights attorney, Jay Sekulow of the ACLJ. The spies who were trying to keep me distracted and quiet were aware that I wasn't cooperating. The spies managed to convince my boss that I could walk away with many of his best customers. Now, I would never do anything like that because I believe the Bible, you reap what you sow. With my invention sabotaged and my new career sabotaged, I left Gulf Breeze with barely enough money to attend a truck driving school. When I left Gulf Breeze, the police were following me out of town. I remember making a video of that. I remember leaving things that were valuable to me at Robert Moreland's house in Pensacola, things I've never retrieved. I escaped that situation as soon as I was able. Ironically, in 2025, just last year, multiple fake news stories came out that Sally Yates was arrested by the Pensacola JAG and charged with treason. That's the military courts. Of course, it was all fake news, but who would have done this? I think Sally Yates set up those fake stories, hoping that I would repeat it for many reasons. So the local FBI could discredit me and tie my family in and threaten my family. The local FBI special agent in charge here over Minot, North Dakota is Alvin Winston. He was appointed by Chris Wray over this area when they couldn't run me out. Alvin Winston has the credentials of human source validator. In other words, Alvin Winston determines if I'm a credible source or not. Oh yeah, and Alvin Winston worked under Sally Yates, so long that he traces his career back to the Fulton County DA's office. That's right. This is the same Fulton County where Fani Willis conspired against Trump. The same Fulton County that got millions from Biden's DOJ for prosecuting Trump. This is the Fulton County heavily involved in the grand conspiracy investigation, along with Chris Wray and the other people that I named that I'm a witness to earlier. Next episode, I'm a truck driver, a CEO and physicist that has been electronically sabotaged so bad that the best job I can find is to walk in the door of our desperately understaffed trucking industry. My internet and phones are constantly obstructed. As a truck driver, I depend on the internet. The spies sabotage me. They study my situation and surround me and sabotage me. Once again, to quit my job and leave the country. I do, but I can't find employment outside of the United States. I go international, to the Bahamas, Mexico, all over. Then I come back and slug it out with the FBI and the NSA for years, repeatedly sabotaged at work. I document everything. Literally years of me trying to come forward in the nation's top investigations. I video every bit of it. I'm forced out of my job multiple times. I catch the people who do it on video. At one point, I share an address with the lovely FBI agent in charge of my case. I drive a truck belonging to the FBI agent in charge of my case. This is the way that Sally Yates said I would pay them off when I stung her and refused to cooperate. This is how much power the U.S. attorneys and spy agencies have over the citizens when they abuse FISA. After I've been exploited again, after I've restored another truck and the payoff is done, it's time to go to Belize. But I bail, and I try to come forward as a witness for John Durham. The U.S. attorney, FBI agent, and spy team in Utah won't let me go. I've purchased a van so I can travel to D.C. and come forward as America's most important unheard eyewitness. But the criminals using FISA, who intercept phone calls and control who can be heard, won't let me sell my car. The only person they allow me to reach is a 16-year-old girl who wants to come to me, who wants me to go to her house and show her the car. I'm not stupid. I've seen this trap 1,000 times. The car dealer, who I ultimately give my car to, is shocked. He's stunned that I can't sell my car for more. He's so dumbfounded by my story and the evidence in front of him that he wants to go to D.C. with me and help me be heard. Next time, you're going to see, or rather, the next time you see top national news headlines about the grand conspiracy and how there aren't any witnesses and evidence, just type Ferris Broxton, FerrisBroxton.com, down there in the corner of your screen. Type Ferris Broxton into your computer and look at the evidence that they can't see. Look at the case where Sally Yates arranges for me to be held in her family-run jail without bond or trial for 4 years. Ask yourself if your politicians have what it takes to fix the problems with FBI and DOJ, or if I should be brought forward as the nation's most important unheard eyewitness. Ask yourself if I should be the U.S. House Rep for North Dakota, educating the rest of our Congress on how to change the situation by passing laws that control how the FBI and DOJ handle witnesses and evidence. I'm Ferris Broxton. Thank you.